What is the most ducked up thing you did that still haunts you to this day? When I was 17, my brother walked into a room where I was lying down on my back and stamped on my chest. I saw red and stood up and punched him square in the face. Unfortunately, this was in a doorway in front of a staircase, which he fell down backwards, and when he hit the wall at the bottom, folded up in such a way I thought I would kill him. He did not move for what seemed like forever, and I was certain he was dead. The world just spinning out around me. He was not dead, obviously, but knocked out briefly, and he never laid a finger on me again. After being the kind of nasty bully who had spent much of my childhood just randomly beating on me for his own enjoyment, those were the longest seconds of my life. Hulk sees this as an absolute win. Incredible or Hogan? Why not both? I don't know about haunts, but it makes me cringe. In public school we had this thing in our school called Jumpstart for kids where you'd go around, often door to door, collecting money for this charity once a year. Anyway, I was 12 and I liked a boy in high school, and he convinced me to take the envelope and go door to door and collect money to give to him so he could buy a drum set. I walked around collecting from all these sweet people who told me I was so nice for collecting money for underprivileged kids. Fortunately, I got caught and my parents made me donate it instead. So embarrassing. That reminds me of when I was in elementary school and we had this wrapping paper door-to-door catalog fundraiser. I collected an envelope full of checks, money, and order slips from around the neighborhood. So I turn in this full envelope at the front office and I'm done. Randomly a few weeks later I get called back up to the office and they tell me that they never got the envelope. They kept asking me exactly who I gave it to and when. Being weeks later I had no idea, just it was whoever was at the counter that day. Then they kept asking me to double check my bedroom just in case I really never turned it in. Honestly, I think one of the office people just pocketed the cash and threw the rest away. Did they anything to you when you could not find the money, like punish you? Nope. I do remember actually checking my own room and somehow hoping I would find it, even though I was positive that it was not there because I had literally turned it in. Then I also remember, funnily enough, when I was taking the orders, one guy kept asking, "You are sure this is not a scam?" Now again, "You are sure this is not a scam?" Then he ordered something after I reassured him. I do not know if he gave cash or check. I assume cash because he was so paranoid. Then he was actually right in the end and did not get his order. I almost felt bad for reassuring that guy and then that happening, but I did my part 100%, so that's not my fault. Provincial Park. Pay shower. 12 years old. Line up to get in. Towards the end of my turn in the shower, get the urge to poop. Cannot hold it. Using a sock to smoosh the last of it down the drain. Water turns off. Out of quarters. Put a towel over my head. Run out of there past the lineup. Get back to the campsite. Immediately change clothes, shoes, hairstyle. Put on a ball cap. Work up the courage to go by the area later on. It is all cordoned off. Hear people angrily discussing how someone took a dump in the shower. They always go back to the scene of the crime. We had a camper in this large campground at a lake when I was growing up. Tons of families with kids riding bicycles and golf carts up and down the gravel roads through the property. There was this one kid that was a few years older than me. I was 10. He was probably 12 or so, whose dad was a security guard and they lived on site. And he was the biggest punk in the park. He'd try and wrestle you in the pool, throw rocks at you as you were fishing, ride off on your bike if you left it laying around, bully and hit smaller kids, even girls. I was driving the golf cart down a pretty steep gravel hill one day when I came up on him on his bike, going the same way as me. He never turned around to acknowledge I was there, so I got up just to the side of him and turned hard right into him. We were both going probably 10-15 miles an hour down this hill. He took a nasty spill and rolled off the side of the road and wasn't moving. I kept on going, acting like nothing happened. We were completely isolated, so no one saw me. I remember him getting taken away in an ambulance and hearing that he'd been hurt pretty bad. I immediately felt remorse for what I'd done, but never said a word to anyone. He or anyone else never had any idea I did it either. I look back now and think about how much of a financial strain I put on that family, seeing as how they were already living in a camper. That was a really evil thing I didn't. It still crosses my mind quite often. This random stranger grants you forgiveness. Just do not do it again. Pretty please. I second this. Do not turn back into a 10-year-old boy and knock a 12-year-old bully down a hill on his bike. When I was a child, I was staying at a relative's house in a foreign to me country. I woke up in the middle of the night really needing to poop. The toilet was in the basement and the house was dark. I had no idea where the light switches were, so I found a plastic bag, pooped in it. I panicked and ended up going onto the balcony to clear my head. The only thing I could think of was to throw it as hard as I could. It ended up landing on the neighbor's metal roof. There it sat for the duration of my trip. Still haunts me 20 years later. Edit. Some of these responses are stirring more guilt within me. I should say I was 13. So problem solving skills should have been more sophisticated. The old summertime sizzler. We moved to a new house when I was 8. When an old friend called to ask if we could play together, I said sorry, I am too busy playing with my new friends. I threw a huge rock on my friend's head. He bled through his beanie, and when we got into the air they said it was about 1 centimeter from a killing blow. We are still great friends today 15 years after, but man, could I have made a huge mistake. I accidentally broke a friend's arm when we were kids. Where we lived, most of the houses were built up on stilts, so the ground floor was just an open, concreted space, usually with a cinder block laundry and a car space tucked away somewhere. Anyway, my parents always parked their cars under our house. While her parents had an actual garage, they were fancy like that, so we'd go roller skating under her house. We used to swing each other around by our arms and see how fast we could spin. She was spinning. I reached out to grab her hand, slingshotted her into a steel support pylon, and broke her arm. I am a terrible person, but I laughed out loud at your description of how you hurt her. I did not know it was ducked up at the time because I was maybe 5, but I somehow still remember it. So you know the carnival horses you can sit on outside of grocery stores back in the 90s? Well, I wanted to ride one and this sweet old woman tried to help me get on, slipped, and really hurt herself falling into the ride. I just remember hearing her scream and I got scared and ran away. I'm 31 years old and think about that day at least once a week. Edit. Thanks everyone. Even those who laughed. While it did not haunt me, it just makes me think of my grandparents, and honestly just her scream freaks me out still. But I'm sure she was okay, as was mentioned. Have a great Sunday everyone. You have got to grant yourself forgiveness on this one. You were 5. If you have been around kids that age, they are totally new to the world and have few troubleshoot or problem solving skills. Nobody should look to a kid in an emergency for help or support. You did what I would expect a kid to do. You were overwhelmed and ran to escape an uncomfortable situation. I'm certain she did not fault you, but was getting joy from helping a child. Nintendo, I never saw that. I swear I never saw that. Sends another kid on a journey to save the world. Nintendo does seem to have the weirdest hero villain dynamics. An Italian plumber has to constantly save his girlfriend and country from a giant turtle that's apparently immune to even lava. A 10-year-old kid with fire-breathing animals has to stop a criminal organization from ending the world. A little pink ball has to defeat eldritch abominations every other week. Easy. When I was 5, I burned my house down. We were living in a small home. Me, my sister, mom, dad. I was supposed to be in the bed, but I wanted a toy or something that was under my bed, and I did not want to wake my parents by turning on my light. So I grabbed my dad's cigarette lighter and lit the flame under my bed. Needless to say, it went up like a match. My dad tried to stomp the fire out after I started screaming fire, burning his leg horribly. My room and the source of the fire was blocking every other bedroom from escape, so everyone had to jump out of a window. Funnily enough, I do not remember the world class but whipping I must have received for that. I just cringe at the thought that I almost killed all of us being a dumb kid. I imagine a 5-year-old saying oops, then igniting the ducking house. I was married to an insanely abusive man. After 2 years I escaped and he killed himself shortly after. Not sure if it was him avoiding charges or avoiding his deployment, but his family decided it was 100% my fault. They told the police I gave him the gun and encouraged him. That was investigated and unfounded. What they didn't know was he'd scanned and emailed me his suicide note the wee hours of the morning of. The police didn't find the note. Of course I handed it over when they asked. His family would not believe I wasn't involved or at fault and harassed me for a long time. If I got a job and they found out about it, they'd call and leave so many complaints I'd get let go. Found out what I drove and had their other kids and their friends follow me. I ended up having to leave that town and disappearing to avoid them. But before I did, I printed a copy of his suicide note, found his mom's car at her job, and left it on the window shield. That note detailed the abuse his father put him through, his rage at his mother for never leaving him and making himself and his siblings live with the sob, that he never wanted me to blame myself, that this was his way of getting the hell away from them and the damage he caused. I felt pretty bad for a while, but at the same time, they literally wouldn't leave me alone and stalked me for 5 years. You had every right to do that. I agree. I did not call my friend back when he left a voicemail. It was a casual message saying hey, and I did not ignore him for any reason. Just got caught up in life stuff. He killed himself that night. I vowed to never not call someone back again, and that was 13 years ago. That's not your fault. When I was 14, I wrote a note to my dad telling him he should not be smoking, and this is why I was taking away his full pack of cigarettes. I was taking them to smoke them. I have never regretted anything more in my life. Bored in the house one day alone when I was about 10, so decided to give my dog a shower. I genuinely loved my dog. He was my best friend growing up. But for some unknown reason I decided to turn the shower on to hot water only, extremely hot, and started showering him. There was a delay I guess in him reacting, because his fur was so thick, which meant I kept it on him for a few seconds. Suddenly he started yelping like dogs do when in pain. His instincts were to not be aggressive or try to escape, but just looked at me scared and confused. I panic smashed on the cold and cooled him down as quick as I could. Fortunately he was not burnt or had any ongoing issues. He never even lost trust in me. I felt physical sick and ashamed in myself for days after, and obviously it still bothers me 20 years later. The good thing to come from it is that I was so disturbed by my action that I have never knowingly inflicted pain on anyone or anything since. It's okay. We all make mistakes. You meant absolutely no harm. The fact that you still feel terrible about it only shows great empathy. It's okay. Your dog forgave you. You should forgive yourself. I was at school, and for no reason at all, I eavesdropped a very private and delicate conversation between one of my teachers and her husband. Then she opened the door and saw me eavesdropping. It was beyond humiliating, and I deserved the scolding afterwards. I was young and stupid obviously, but when I remember the look on her face, I still cringe hard, even if it has been almost 20 years. Edit. Few people ask about the conversation and my age that time, so I should clarify. It was about her then pregnancy, which later miscarried. At that time I was 13, and it was, and still is, way out of my character to eavesdrop or meddle in others' affairs. So I really don't know what got into me, and I stood outside her office to listen. From that day on we both knew that I knew about her miscarriage, and the feeling was extremely awkward and cringe. 2nd grade. I had a classmate fake named Sasha who was kinda awkward. Crooked teeth. Quiet, not too bright. Did not really have any friends within the class, though she did have some people she would hang out with at recess. In any case, a boy in the grade above us, a friend of my brother's actually, for some reason decided to spread a rumor among all of us that Sasha had license to stay away from her. I bought it without a second thought, and so did most of us as far as I know. She was not particularly teased, but she was just shunned. No one talked to her. She was around till the end of the year and did not come back for 3rd grade. No clue what happened to her, but I really hope we did not mess her up too much. Next summer, I got the worst case of head lice my pediatrician had ever seen. My dudes. Bro, I don't know what's up with the lice situation in like elementary school, but a girl in my grade back when I was in elementary also apparently had lice. Did not know if she did, and I did not even know what lice was, so I just kept away from her. But this same situation happened with the shunning and shit. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe for more videos.